A serial bomber is terrorizing the city of Austin, Texas. On Sunday night, 2 cyclists were injured after setting off what appears to have been a tripwire connected to a bomb. It's the 4th bombing in that city in just 3 weeks. Terry Turchi is a former FBI Deputy Assistant Director of Counterterrorism, and he joins us tonight. Terry, thanks for coming on. So,
Thank you, Tucker.
Is there, from what we know about these explosions, is there anything that connects them, a theme?
Well, I don't think we know of a theme that connects them. Right now, the best information, Tucker, we're going to have is the forensics aspect of them. That's what's going to help us, at least in these initial days, to try to put all of this together, because the people at the lab, ATF lab, the police lab, the FBI's lab, are going to be able to look at every little aspect of crime debris, of things found at crime scenes, and everything from switches in bombs to the explosive main charges to the way the containment vessels were designed. All of these things are part of the bomber's signature. So they're going to be able to tell us, first of all, if they've ever seen something like this before. Even, for example, you talk about tripwires. So one of the things that tripwires conjures up is the idea of somebody maybe from the military, or maybe someone who was part of some guerrilla warfare movement at some point in time. They can go back and make some educated guesses of the person's skills and talents and where they picked them up from looking at the way the bomb was assembled, and then we go from there. But you just can't underestimate, particularly now that we've only had, and I say only, it's very sad and tragic, but that's not a lot of bombings to be able to tell a lot yet, although the lab can tell a great deal from the forensics.
So there was early speculation, reckless speculation by the press that these were racially motivated, which obviously the last thing this country needs. Now it looks like the victims were black, white, Hispanic, so there's no obvious racial pattern here. Again, thank heaven. But can you think, are there other motives that come immediately to mind?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because here's what I learned from Unabomb and from the Olympic bombing, Tucker. Even in leading the task forces there, we tried to stay away from motive. Now, motive is important if you may have a name, but when you're trying to get on the trail to identify a subject, you can absolutely find yourself definitely in the swamp. And think back, just a couple of examples. After the Oklahoma City bombing, all of the uproar and all the crying about the Middle Eastern Arabs, quote, being involved in that turned out to obviously be domestic terrorism. But think about anthrax. In the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks and then the anthrax attacks, which were just literally weeks later, there was this tremendous push to literally blame that on Saddam Hussein and Iraq. And in fact, I can tell you straight out that the FBI at that point in time was involved in confrontations with the Department of Justice to slow that thinking down.
I remember.
Because even then early on, even then
I
early
remember
on,
Bill Kristol getting out there and saying, yeah, we think that Saddam did this as a pretext for a war in Iraq. It was, of course, all lying and propaganda as usual. Quickly, these were not sent, is that correct? These were placed, apparently, outside homes? That seems odd to me.
It is odd, and here's what it suggests. When you go into a residential neighborhood and you walk up on somebody's porch and you place a package, or you go out into another residential neighborhood and you take the time that's required to place and then set and prepare a tripwire bomb to go off, you're really probably familiar, or at least at the very least feel very comfortable in that kind of surrounding. I'll give you a quick example. 2 bombings in 1982 and 1985 at Corey Hall at UC Berkeley as part of the Unabomb series of events. Well, why was that so comfortable for somebody to go into the narrow hallways of Corey Hall twice? Well, as it turns out, Theodore Kaczynski taught math at the building right around the corner. So those are the kind of things that we can learn from the past, and hopefully those are the kind of things we can apply to these kinds of situations now, because right now, even though it does appear very random and very tough, I guarantee you that over time, as they stay with the facts and they separate fact, fiction, and theory, they'll start seeing patterns develop that will be unique and applicable to the person they're looking for. And eventually, they'll be able to give the public the right information. And as we know from the history of working together, law enforcement, the media, and the public, all of these things can be brought together and solved.
Well, that's what happened with you, of course. Terry, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight.